welcome into my kitchen. We are talking everything kombucha today. This is Kombucha 101. Get ready, buckle up to make your own kombucha. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to make your very own continuous brew. Hi there, I'm Gina Ramirez. I am a licensed therapist, but I'm also a certified health coach, and I talk everything health and wellness. And today we are making our very own kombucha brew, continuous brew. That means that it's always making its own fermentation here. And we're going to talk more about that as we go along. But I like to talk about gut bacteria when I talk about kombucha because we're talking about a probiotic, and many people drink kombucha because of its probiotic quality. If you want more information about kombucha, I recommend this, The Big Book of Kombucha. It tells you everything that you need to know to brew your own batch and the second fermentation of flavoring as well. So this is going to be the first fermentation video. What I want you to know though is that when we talk about dysbiosis and symbiosis of the gut bacteria, I want you to know what it is like for digestion to take place in your body, because part of this is me educating you on why you should be making kombucha in the first place. So you know, I'm sure you know, that digestion begins the minute you put something in your mouth and chew it up. Those digestive enzymes get pumping and start breaking down your food. And then it goes into the esophagus, down into the stomach, where more digestive enzymes are doing its job, into the small intestine, and then finally into the large intestine. That's where I want to begin this journey of kombucha, dysbiosis, symbiosis. What's going on in your gut? Well, we've got trillions of gut bacteria that are living in your gut, and that's where the kombucha comes in. That's where the probiotic comes in. We want to feed the healthy gut bacteria so that they thrive, so that they grow. How is your garden growing down in your large intestine? That's what we need to figure out, is how do we put more of the good stuff in, the probiotic from the kombucha, or maybe you're taking a probiotic. How do we get more of that? Because what ends up happening is that we poop it out. So it's this continuous journey of what are you putting in, it's eliminating, it's getting eliminated, right? And then we have to continually put more back in. So I'm going to tell you about what other probiotics you can use as well, but this is all about how do I make the kombucha itself? How do I flourish, make those good bacteria flourish in the large intestine? So kombucha is simply a black tea. I tend to use black tea. You can use other teas like green tea, but the kombucha likes black tea. I live in Texas, and so shopping at H-E-B is fantastic because I can get lots of organics that are generic to H-E-B, so they're a little bit more cost effective, right? But they still offer fantastic options for me. So this is the black tea that I tend to get, and then I get the organic sugar as well. You want to use a really fine sugar. So the way that you start your brew is simply with a sugared tea. You're gonna make some sugar tea. And the thing that you need to know is that you need the tea to be cooled off. So start off by making your tea. I like to make it in these mason jars simply for the fact that it cools off faster. So I have 3 big mason jars, right? And I've got 1 big tea bag in here and 1 cup of sugar in here as well. And that is going to go into my big 2-gallon mason jar, if you can call this a mason jar. So I've got the mason jar here, the big one, the 2-gallon one, with what is called a Scoby. If you can see that thing floating around in there, that is a Scoby, a mother. Scoby stands for a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. Yeah, you heard me right, bacteria and yeast, because guess what? The trillions of microbes that are living inside you are bacteria, yeast, fungus, virus even, that live in symbiosis mostly with our body. Unless you are eating a standard American diet filled with sugar and junk food, then you probably got dysbiosis going on in your gut. meaning maybe you're dealing with a lot of constipation or diarrhea or a host of other things, right? Crohn's, you could have all kinds of gut issues going on. Again, that's where a good probiotic comes into play because it can really help you with some of those symptoms. So we've got the Scoby. Now, where do you get the Scoby? The Scoby, I really encourage you, if you know somebody who's brewing their own, to get it from an actual person that you know. Or if you don't have any way of doing that, try getting it, I guess, from an online source. Maybe I've seen them on Amazon. I think they're freeze dried. I'm not exactly sure how that works. So again, I would encourage you to get it from somebody that you know, if you know somebody who's brewing their own. So the Scoby is living and breathing. I know this sounds crazy. My husband calls it an alien, but the Scoby eats, because it's living and breathing, your tea that you've just made, your sweet tea, and it's eating the sugar out of that sweet tea. The Scoby lives and breathes, okay? So that's why the tea needs to be at room temperature. Otherwise, you're gonna kill your Scoby. We don't wanna kill it. We want it to do its job, the fermentation process that it's going to do. So my Scoby is really big. It's really big, it's in there, it looks kind of like chicken. It has the same texture, I would say, as a chicken breast, maybe. It sort of reminds me of a placenta, but we won't go there. So whatever it reminds you of, that's okay. Just know that it's kind of like a chicken breast. It's thick, right? And it's growing to the size of your container. Now I have a gallon container here, and I call this my Scoby Hotel, because what's gonna end up happening is as you make your own brew of kombucha, every brew is going to build another Scoby on top of your original mother Scoby. So lots of baby Scobies I have running around San Antonio and beyond, because my Scoby Hotel gets full, and then I distribute the baby Scobies. I cut them up, put them in little mason jars, and distribute them to my friends, right? Because I'm making so much kombucha all the time. A continuous brew means that every time you brew, that Scoby is gonna be on top. So you pull the top one off, or maybe you pull the bottom one off and you stick it in your Scoby Hotel, or maybe you throw it away. Whatever you decide to do with that second Scoby, it's all good. I like to have some reserve in case something happens to the mother that I've been using. And things like it may get moldy, just things might happen to your mother Scoby. So I always recommend having a backup Scoby. All right, so let's get cracking. We're going to use our sweet tea that you've been brewing that has cooled off. And literally we're putting the sweet tea in the big kombucha, or the big 2-gallon jar here that I have. Hopefully you can see that well. And I've got 3 of them. What I'm going to do after this is I'm going to add water. I'm gonna fill one of these up with water 3 times, because I've got 3 jars, and add water to this because it's pretty thick, it's pretty potent right now with the tea, and I want to diffuse it a little bit. So I'm gonna add 3 waters from my 3 mason jars to this brew. Then I'm going to cover it up with a kitchen towel, put a rubber band around it to make it tight. Now remember, the kombucha's got to breathe. This is a fermentation process, so it's going to be breathing through this towel, but we don't want bugs or any lint or dust getting into our tea, right? So we're gonna cover it up, and I'm gonna let it sit for 12 to 15 days. That's the fermentation process that I prefer. I don't like a real sweet brew, but I also don't want it too tangy, too vinegary. The longer it sits, the more vinegary it gets. What's happening in this process? It's fermenting. The yeast, it's doing its job. It's creating that probiotic for you. So here's the thing, you've got a probiotic, right, that's going on, and you're drinking your kombucha. How much should you drink a day? I like to drink about a cup a day of my brew. This is just the first brew, okay? The first fermentation of making the kombucha. The second fermentation is all about the flavoring process. So I'll be back to talk about that after my 12 to 15 days is up. So let's talk for just a minute about what it takes for a probiotic in your body. Like, what are some other ways that you can get probiotics? Probiotics come from soy products, kombucha. Actually, no, let me take that back. Probiotics come from sauerkraut, kombucha, pickling, tempeh, dark chocolate, apple cider vinegar, miso. So think of things that are fermented. You know, any kind of fermented vegetables that you can think of, like the pickling or the sauerkraut. So think of that as a probiotic food. But in order for the probiotics to do its job, it's got to have something to eat. So it needs a prebiotic to go with it so that it's cultivating your large intestine with all that good gut bacteria. Feeding the good gut bacteria needs the prebiotic. The prebiotic are non-digestible foods that encourage the growth and beneficial species of the probiotic. So celery, garlic, asparagus, onions, artichoke, and oats are what's going to give you that prebiotic that you need to help the probiotic do its job, because it's got to eat something, right? So there you have it. Easy, right? To make your kombucha, to get the probiotics into that large intestine. Trillions and trillions of microbes, 10 to 1, you guys, 10 of them to 1 of our human cells. So we're more of those microbes than we are human cells, if you consider that, in the large intestine. We need to be flourishing in the large intestine with good microbes, feeding that microbiome. All right, friends, if you have any questions about your brew, just hit me up with the comments below. Let me know how I can help you to make your fantastic continuous brew of kombucha. Until next time, be well.